Hey there, listeners. This is Amy Takaya on the Free Your Soma podcast. Have you been having issues inside your body that you don't feel like your doctor or the medical professionals are quite hitting the mark on figuring out with you, right? We are going to explore this topic today of wellness and your body and the most important person in your life, you. We're going to explore this through the lens of a guest named Anna Finck, who stepped away from medical school to address her own health crisis. She's here to share her story of taking an unconventional path to address her hormonal imbalances, digestive issues, and reproductive issues, despite the odds and lack of evidence. She's also going to share the way that she supports other people like you who are on these journeys and have questions that still haven't been answered. So stay tuned.
Every day there is a forgetting, and every moment there is the possibility of remembering. Remembering who you truly are, awakening to your body, to the inner world, to the experience of being alive. Here is where you find the beauty, the joy, and here is where you free your soma. I'm your host, Aimee Takaya. I'm here to help you move from pain to power, from tension to expansion, and ultimately from fear to love.
Welcome, Anna, to the show.
Thank you, Amy. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have this conversation. I feel like I can really resonate with some pieces of your story that I've been reading, in your bio and what you've already kind of shared with me before we started recording. In terms of having stepped away from becoming a medical doctor, what do you call yourself now? If you're not a medical professional, you're in some other category. Tell us a little bit about like that transition and what you identify with now.
Yes, so I am a wellness architect and I stepped away 8 years ago. And then that led me to forge my own path. And it's been what I call my personalized PhD. So while I didn't obtain my MD, I created my own degree. And it's really been through embodied wisdom and lived experience of trial and error and finding what does and does not work through experimentation that led me to where I am today.
Wow. And it sounds like you had some pretty difficult things that you were dealing with. Were you dealing with these things like before you entered medical school? Like when did kind of your health issues start to really stand out to you?
Absolutely, yes. I had been dealing with digestive issues ever since I was young, but I didn't know anything different. So I normalized them like so many of us do. And I think this really highlights the low threshold that we have or the low standard that we have in society for health and what true
Mm.
health is. And we just grow accustomed to what we've known without realizing there's so much more and there's another level. And so I then became more and more aware of these symptoms as I went through my pre-med curriculum and then realized at the point where I lost my period completely and went through severe adrenal fatigue that like, hey, something's not right. And while I was told I'm fine and like, oh, just rest or whatever it was, there was so much more.
Yeah, yeah. And medical school, especially pre-med and formal schooling in general is very rigorous. Do you feel like that sort of was a highlighter for you in terms of like how your body's been managing stress isn't sustainable?
Absolutely. It was that pre-med curriculum and all the time leading up to medical school that was so stressful and just the admission process and the preparation and the MCAT and all of that that was incredibly stressful. And I noticed in looking back in hindsight that my cycle had changed and I just wasn't super connected to my body to know what was going on with these changes. I didn't know how to read into it and say like, hey, there's imbalance here. I just kept pushing through.
And had you received any kind of like formal diagnosis of like PCOS or endometriosis, or was there any like sort of beginning point that you started at with like, okay, this is sort of what they say is going on?
Yes, it wasn't until I lost my period completely and was a few months into that that I was diagnosed with hypothalamic amenorrhea, which is a fancy term for lack of menstruation or an absent period.
Okay, it doesn't
And
really tell you much,
it
right?
doesn't really tell you much. And so I started researching and I wasn't satisfied with what I was finding and how to heal. And it was like, oh, it could be caused by excess stress or over exercising, under eating. And I was like, okay, so I'll play with all of these things, but it didn't give me what I knew there was more to. So that's really what forged that path dive deeper, but also my mom's health crisis and diagnoses with autoimmune conditions was really the
Oh,
catalyst that led me to go deep in the nutrition, deep in like psychology and all these other areas, traditional medicine, functional medicine, Eastern medicine. And then that's when I had the deeper understanding of the body is always speaking to us in codes. Symptoms are codes, signals from the body showing signs of imbalance. And really, when we get to the root, we heal. But when we're just silencing or suppressing symptoms, they linger and then we silence them so we're not aware of them. But it doesn't mean the root has been addressed. And then it can lead to secondary ailments and progression later.
right. Yes. And in terms of what you sort of, what not only what you do, but what you did to help heal these things, it sounds like it was a combination of not just, getting more rest and maybe some down regulation of your nervous system, but some really practical, like habitual life things, right? That you did that
Yes.
again, it sounds like there was an experimentation to see what would work and there was a lot of research. And so tell us a little bit about some of the models that you have kind of experimented or innovated with to address these issues we're talking about.
Absolutely. So I always begin with the foundation. As a wellness architect, when you're building a home, you have a blueprint. So your body is the blueprint. And then when you start building that home, you begin with the foundation. So knowing how to construct the foundation begins with understanding the landscape, which is your body and its terrain. And so when we begin to reconnect to our body, then we can understand what's going on. And we start with food as the foundation, hydration as the foundation, nutrition and supplementation as the foundation. And once we start to address the physical foundation, the mental, energetic, emotional, and spiritual elements of wellness and our well-being become more harmonized too. So I really found food to be so healing. Hippocrates says, let thy food be thy medicine and thy medicine thy food. We still have the Hippocratic oath, but what happened to that Hippocratic statement? So that was something that I played with. I tried all these different diets, high protein, high fat. I tried pescatarian. I tried so many different things and really played with it for years and read a lot and just trialed and errored it in my own body. And then it was meditation, and I started meditating and really connecting to my body and to chakra balancing and energy work and yoga. And I pursued a yoga teacher training and then followed the thread of embodiment. And I was so aware of how disconnected I had become from my body. And this was interesting because our body is the source of our power, yet we have been intentionally designed or, distracted from that. And it's like the system has been designed intentionally to disconnect us from our bodies and our power. And so in reconnecting to our bodies, we reconnect to our power. And through breath work and NLP, neuro linguistic programming, and emotional freedom technique, really learning all these different ways to support the body, mind, and soul in these myriad of ways. It was so powerful and profound. And instead of looking outside of myself, realizing that I am the one. I'm the one to heal. I am the one to balance my body. I am the one, yes, I can have support and guidance and mentorship, but it is our consistent daily actions that compound over time and result in the radiance that we desire.
Did you know that your muscles are holding on to thoughts, memories, and feelings? If you have a tight neck or back, you're not just getting old, you're experiencing a buildup of tension from the life you've lived. Most people don't know this, but there is a part of your brain that can reverse and prevent chronic tension. When you relax your muscles, you not only move better and regulate your nervous system, but you also free yourself from the grip the past has over your body. So you can live with freedom, confidence, and enjoy your life now. How does that sound? Join me, Aimee Takaya, and discover what my clients are raving about at youcanfreeyoursoma.com.
Right. And so it sounds like this was a living process for you. This was something that was ongoing that you had to recommit to, right,
Mm-hmm.
regularly. And
Yes.
I think you know, it's pretty remarkable that you were able to keep recommitting to it this way, because I'm sure that there were times that were very frustrating, especially with food. Like, I know a lot of people are like, well, I read this and then I read that, and like, is cholesterol good for me? Is it bad for me? Is it, should I be eating like, no fruit because it has sugar in it, or should I eat fruit because it's so nutritious? Like, there's all this like, conflicting information.
Yes.
And so I imagine that you did go through a lot of frustration, and different kinds of emotions. And it sounds like you resourced yourself with meditation and other kinds of mindfulness practices that were part of supporting you to continue to like keep going and keep recommitting to this sometimes very confusing terrain of wellness, right?
Absolutely. And there were times where I thought I was eating so healthy, but then I realized, oh my God, that wasn't healthy. All of these trends that I started following and these trending, popular ways in the world are like, oh, is that really healthy or is that health hindering? And so finding, yes, like trying these things and then feeling so confused and conflicted, like feeling like, well, I can't eat that. I can't eat that. What can I eat? Because there's a conflicting argument for that, but then there's also a supporting argument for it. And so it was really getting down to the simple basics because once you understand, like you look at the source of funding for certain research studies, you look at the angles, the propaganda, the biases, you start to see a common thread. And the thing is that our bodies are so innately intelligent and they will heal. They're so resilient and they will heal when they're given what they need. But there's so much confounding information and conflicting information out there that it can feel impossible to heal. And that's what it was for me. I was like, I guess I just am not meant for radiant health. And I just felt so compelled by it that I kept going and I didn't give up. But in my world, what once felt impossible, healing that is now inevitable because we understand the body blueprint. We understand the foundations of nutrition and supplementation and designing a lifestyle that truly aligns with the body, with the biology, and with the psychology, and allows us to create an environment where radiance inevitably occurs.
So in your practice with, your clients, do you know, kind of integrate their feedback ongoingly to sort of pivot and help them figure out? Because it sounds like you really created an individualized health wellness plan for yourself, but like
Mhm.
everybody's got different genetics, we've got different, ways that our brains work. So
Yes.
like when you're working with a person, how do you get feedback that maybe they're not even used to asking themselves? And then how do you like integrate that feedback to help guide them? I'm curious.
Of course. So every individual is so unique, and we honor that. You have a unique body blueprint, you have a unique human design, you have a unique lifestyle, unique goals, unique vision for your life. So all of that is considered in this approach to wellness. And we're constantly fine-tuning, refining, realigning. And there are things where it's like we're understanding the body in a certain way, or we have these symptoms or certain reactions to foods that we feel, oh, are negatively associated with a certain food, but we actually realize they're healing reactions depending on the food that is. So we have to
Mm.
understand and distinguish the difference between health hindering foods versus health promoting foods, understanding how food impacts the body, not just physically, but energetically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And then see, like, okay, yes, based on your living environment, based on your toxic load, based on the pathogenic load, based on toxic heavy metals in the body or whatever symptoms you're experiencing, like, let's fine tune this and modify it so it feels more supportive and really titrate it to the individual's nervous system rather than a one size fits all, because that's never how it is. It's so curated and customized to the individual.
Yeah. And sometimes people have multiple layers of things going on too. Like in
Right.
terms of the clients that you work with, what are some of the kind of common intersections? Have you worked with people with Lyme and POTS and like some of these, more mysterious like
Yes.
diseases and things like this?
Mystery conditions and illness, chronic illness, autoimmune conditions, really when it began with my mom with autoimmune conditions and understanding the truth and finding the link to Epstein-Barr virus and these autoimmune conditions has been so powerful and profound to know that there's a pathogen at the root of this. And when we understand that, we can then cultivate an environment in the body that is no longer one that's favorable for the pathogens, but one that's favorable for health and healing. And so it's like every human is unique, but each individual is experiencing at least one symptom. And these symptoms are so common, they've been normalized, but they're not normal. And so when we
Mm-hmm.
understand what's really going on, I see a lot of skin health issues, digestive health issues, reproductive health issues, hormonal imbalances. I've worked with both men and women of all different ages and stages of life. And yeah, I find my zone of genius truly is women's wellness. Being a woman, having walked through that and walked with my mom, it really began for her and then it continued for me. And now it really does continue for you, the other women in the world who are dealing with these conditions and symptoms that feel like what's wrong with me, feeling like we're defective, feeling burdened by the shame of something's wrong with my body and not understanding what's going on and feeling hopeless and despairing, and then
Right.
realizing our own power to architect health when we understand the body. But we haven't had that blueprint or that understanding, and it's not our fault at all. It's like we did not manifest these symptoms or conditions. We live in a world where there are toxic exposures, pathogenic exposures. It's not our fault. We didn't manifest it. We didn't create it with our thoughts. It's understanding and moving through this living ecosystem of this world and understanding what can we control versus what is a, an exposure that we can't, but really supporting the body where we can.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's a complexity to this that you're
Hmm.
used to. You're kind of like aware of, okay,
Totally.
yeah, okay, so you're feeling this and you're feeling that. How much of that is our, beliefs and our conditioning and the things that we, kind of can control or we think we can control psychologically and
Hmm.
emotionally by processing a unprocessed traumatic event in our lives? And how much of this is literally like a pathogen that you were exposed to or a
Right.
toxic load that you're carrying that is simply because of maybe where you were brought up geographically and the kind of water you drank.
Exactly. And it's so multifaceted. And then it could be mold exposure too.
Mm,
Like, what kind of air are we breathing? What kind of toxic heavy metals are we breathing? Or have we had a lot of
yeah,
exposure with braces and mercury fillings or whatever it is? It's like each body presents differently. And so it's really getting curious and dissecting the
interesting. Yeah.
symptoms.
I've had a theory for a while, and maybe you have something to say about this, about kind of when our nervous system, and this is why I think like meditation and
Hmm.
mindfulness practices, they help so much. I do somatic movement and somatic release with people. It's
Yeah.
like that foundational piece is
Yeah.
so powerful because it allows your body to go into parasympathetic or into healing mode. And at the same time, there are limits to how far that can take you before you need something really practical, right? So
Yes.
it's a foundational piece having, the ability to actually downregulate yourself out of stress. But if the
Hmm.
stress is reoccurring and the issue is persisting, then it takes another angle. But if you are able to get that foundational piece in there, I think this is where it comes in as a theory. I think that if you have a more downregulated nervous system that goes into healing mode on a regular basis, instead of living in chronic
Hmm.
fear and fight or flight, then mold and these other things are less impactful to you because your body's able to take care of it. And now I'm
Right.
talking about someone who maybe doesn't already have a toxic load or has healed from that toxic load versus someone who's dysregulated, their nervous system's totally on all the time. They're not sleeping
Hmm.
well. Their body doesn't go into parasympathetic easily. And then they're exposed to mold. And then they're exposed to toxins. Like it's just going to compound it.
Right. Well, the stress truly does compromise our immune function and strength. And so that adrenaline and that fight flight response codes our body for survival. And when we're in survival, we're full of adrenaline. Our brain, that's creating brain heat that makes our nervous system and body more susceptible to these invaders, pathogens. And so, of course, and it's also something to note that the pathogens will feed off of the adrenaline too.
Mhm.
So that just feeds and spurs that
So it
environment and
almost
creates
makes you
more.
more attractive to them.
Right. It's like, well, and of course, and it lowers our defenses. But like we all have some sort of pathogenic load, right? And like we're
Yes.
exposed to it at different times, but then they go through dormancy and latency phases. So there are times where they're not so loud and present and they're in a more dormant phase, but the more we feed them with their preferred fuels, with stress, toxic heavy metals, toxins, the more the body's compromised, the weaker our system becomes, the more they can thrive and propagate. And if we're eating an acidifying diet, meaning like foods that create acidity in the body, that diminishes our oxygen concentration, and oxygen is antiviral in nature. So that's going to diminish our immune strength and create more favorability for these viruses, pathogens, bacteria to thrive, propagate, and proliferate.
Yeah, that makes sense. That totally fits with what I've experienced as
You're
well in
totally
my
right.
own body. I mean, my story is I had like all these food allergies from the
Hmm.
time I was 11. I had this whole framework where I just thought like, oh, these foods are just bad for me. I can't eat these things, you
Right.
know. And then over time I realized, oh, it's actually about my gut microbiome being unhealthy that I can't tolerate certain foods. And, I went from having a very limited diet for like 10 years to actually being able to tolerate all kinds of foods again,
Yeah.
so I really hear what you're saying in terms of like the food being a foundational support. And there's crazy weird blessings that can come from the kind of dedication that, someone like yourself or myself, you put that time in, you're literally
Mhm.
demonstrating to your soul, to your body over and over, I'm worth this.
Yeah.
Like I'm valuable. Like I'm like I'm the most important person in my life. That's what you're saying when you continue to recommit to these kind of practices and taking care of yourself. So it builds strength in you, right? As you were
Yeah.
describing, your body is your power. When you put
Yes.
that energy in, it pays back tenfold, like over time.
Absolutely. And the foods have these emotional properties and these psychological properties to support our resilience to stress and our response to it. And when we're looking at the emotions, like you know, the stress that comes from that is so impactful. And these foods can actually act as antidotes to the stress. And some of them are adaptogenic, meaning they help the body respond to stress in a more favorable way, one that's not so
Yeah.
destructive. And so we can do all the things like going back to what you were saying about regulating our nervous system and bringing ourselves more into that parasympathetic state. You can do all of these things, but if we're not cultivating that strong foundation of radiant health through the foods, we're going to create more adrenaline and more stress through the food we're eating. And we can do a lot of healing through the mind and the mindset mastery and thoughts and emotional regulation. But if we don't have that foundation of the food, because so many of these symptoms, the psychological symptoms, are related to toxic heavy metals and the pathogens. So if we're not actually doing the steps to heal, it's like you're not going to receive the full benefit. So the food is an essential part of our healing. But I know so many who even tell me, like, I feel better when I don't eat because of the myriad
Right.
range of emotions or reactions, physical reactions they're experiencing. And it's just so uncomfortable and unpredictable that it feels dangerous to eat.
Right. And that's where we get into, how food has really changed culturally. And a lot of times we were raised eating foods that are not really foods, but more food like substances. And
Right.
it changes our kind of orientation to food. And it can be quite the thing to reorient yourself to like real food, like on a psychological, biological level, to have your
Mhm.
body remember, oh yeah, this is safe for me. This is
Yeah.
actually like, even though I'm having this experience. I mean, when people who haven't been eating fiber start eating fiber, they're not going to feel good, right? That they're going to probably be gassy and, you know what I mean? Like have some digestive discomfort. But over time, their body starts adapting to it gradually, right?
Right.
If they're, as long as they're not overloading themselves, and they can learn that eating that salad or eating, fiber as, someone with digestive issues is actually a positive thing in the long run, right?
Hmm.
So maybe you can say a little bit about some of the big obstacles that your clients or that people go through when they're making these transitions.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one thing I want to tie back to because when you were talking about the fiber and the discomfort and all of that, it's like, let's go back to healing. Like you're very aware of the soma and the somatic experience. And when we're looking at past trauma that's unresolved and the suppressed emotion in the fascia, the cells of the body, there's pain that arises when we touch those points.
Mm,
And so part of the healing is the feeling
right.
the pain and discomfort to release it so the body can complete that emotional cycle and process. Now, same thing is true in the body when we're healing on a physical level with food and eating foods that are healing and alkalizing can produce this discomfort. And it feels like, oh, I don't want to eat this food because we have that negative association with it, but it's actually a healing effect. And so when we understand that this is healing, this is a cleansing reaction, it's the food that's purging the pathogen from the body, we have more context and patience for the journey and the process. Now, some of my clients, it's like the discomfort and the pain, and still like that conditioning of this is healthy. And it's like, no, that's actually not as healthy as we've been told or believed it to be. And so it's a lot of that unlearning and
Mm,
remembering what is true and coming back to the simple essence of a life and what true health means and food. So it's like, everyone is so nuanced in their experience, but I think it is like we have created and designed our environment to create comfort. And so we want to reach for that which is comfortable. When we're changing, it puts us in this state of feeling discomfort and we're stretched and that uncertainty. And it's like we want that radiant version of ourselves. We want that body confidence and that strength and that vitality. But in the process of getting there, it can feel like we're getting worse. And then when we
Right.
start experiencing those symptoms again or a flare in our skin, it can feel like, oh my God, this isn't working. And we want to revert back to what was, but we're on the path to healing. And that's where sometimes we don't see, like we confuse the forest for the trees, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think that we have to be able to work with that discomfort,
Mm-hmm.
right? To kind of even regulate that as well, so that we're not putting ourselves that, oh, now this has become the new stressor in my life. This has become
Right.
the new overwhelming thing that I'm constantly, fixating on, or
Right.
what's being like neurotic about, right? Like we have to
Yeah.
figure out a way to like take people through a gradual process. I know that was true for me,
Yes.
that you keep recommitting to this, gaining the experience from the previous, things you try, things that work,
Mm-hmm.
and then you start to really feel. And like you
Yeah.
said, sometimes it's going to get worse before it gets better. Sometimes you're going to go through, a Herxheimer reaction or a detox that feels like your brain is like broken, and it only lasts like a couple of days and then you're through it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's important, I think, for people who haven't embarked on these kind of things before to be able to read and hear about other people's experience and get guidance, right? If they
Yes.
really
Yes.
feel like they can't do this alone and they don't have that support from their family or from their, culture, right? So I think what you're doing is really needed, and it's also very like radical in today's world because it's outside the box, right?
Totally. It's totally outside the box. And when it comes to food, food is so cultural. It's about connection. It's about tradition. But the thing is how we're growing these crops now and what we're doing with these foods now, they become very adulterated and alterated in such a way that they're no longer nourishing in certain forms. And so honoring what was, but then honoring and creating what is to come. And so, how do we, like, when we're experiencing these health challenges, it can feel so lonely, but it's only become more prevalent, more common. And so,
Mm.
I feel like it is our duty, our responsibility to lead ourselves so that we can lead others because we go first. And so many people are going to be experiencing their own challenges with respect to their health because we lived in a world that prided our productivity or our worth based on how much we did get done and how much we do, and instead of focusing on the essence of our being. And so it can create a lot of internal conflict, but also like
Yeah.
familial conflict because I know when I go out to a restaurant or I eat with my family, I'm so different. And it's like I've always stood out and I've always just tried to fit in and conform. And I did that for a while, but it was compromising my own health and well being and flaring more and more symptoms.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you got to choose your experience in your body because you're the one who has to live with it after dinner is over, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's about owning our responsibility. And something I see a lot is like, because in conventional medical school, you only got like 6 hours of nutrition and it was based on the antiquated nutritional standards, et
Model. Mm.
cetera, model. And it's like, how are we then going to focus on health and building, creating, architecting health if we're not talking about the foundational element, which is food, and saying, well, this is just genetic or it's just how it is, and learning to manage it. And it's like, I have so many women who say, well, I just have to accept what it is and learn to manage this. And I'm like, no, you don't have to accept it. You can architect radiant health. Like, you can accept what has been up until this point, but it doesn't mean you have to accept it for life. Because I am so tired of seeing, well, there's no treatment, there's no cure. You can only manage it and do this for it. And it's like, no, every choice we make is either coding our body for survival and stress or radiance and creation. And so, what are we going to choose?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a powerful message. I think that, you know, more and more people are wanting to take that level of responsibility for themselves because they're seeing, whether it's their parents or their, communities, they see that just managing things and taking a prescription medication, it doesn't help you live to your fullest capacity. And there's so many people, and I'm guessing, we're in a similar, like, I'm an elder millennial, maybe you're a bit younger than me or something like that. There's a generation that just says, I want to be the best version of myself. And being the best version of yourself is going to mean not just managing symptoms, but figuring out a way to really move beyond what we've been told is possible, right? For our health and well-being.
Absolutely. Yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, tell us a little bit about how you work. You work individually? Do you teach in a group online? Do you have retreats or in-person experiences that you invite people into?
Yes, so I'm located in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I right now am focusing on individual one-on-one experiences to really go deep. And in the future, I'll be creating more group experiences, mastermind experiences. But right now, it is one-on-one, virtual, or in person. And I also do VIP days, VIP retreats. So if people want to come here to Santa Fe, or I go to their place and we do a lifestyle design and I come into their environment and see the way they've designed their environment, because our environment, like our body's always responding to our environment. And so if we've designed our environment in a way that we're just responding unconsciously, we're going to continue to fulfill and create the same patterns and results. And so we get to refine and redesign our environment, our lifestyle to calibrate us to that next level of health, of radiance, of leadership and confidence. And so it's an evolution, and I'm looking to start leading retreats here in Santa Fe. And
Cool. Yeah, that would be a place
myself,
to do it. It's so
yeah,
beautiful there. Yeah.
so beautiful here. We have so many beautiful hot springs and spas and hiking, and just a place to reconnect to the land. And really, it is reconnecting to ourselves.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I think that one-on-one really probably is the way to go, but over time you can probably create like a group where, people who've already worked with you can support each other in their, lifestyle habits and behaviors that they have cultivated, right, in their time
Yeah.
kind of digging deep. So sounds like a really wonderful thing that you're up to in this world. Thank you so much for coming on the show and for sharing your depth of knowledge and just the kind of variety of techniques that you bring together, right? With also really a clarity on the foundational pieces,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's so curated. It's so experiential, and it's like it's one thing to know something, but knowing something doesn't change us, right? And so I'm not here to just be a transmitter or a teacher of information. I'm here to facilitate activation and transformation through your own integration and embodiment of that information.
Love it. Thank you so
Yeah.
much once again.
Thank
Check
you.
out Anna's information in the show notes. Check out her website. And if you've been struggling with a chronic health issue and you feel like you're hitting a wall, reach out and maybe book a consult with her and see if you can get going on some of these things because it'll change your life.
Thank you so much, Aimee. Thank you, listeners, and have an incredible day.
Thank you.
Hey there, friend. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I would love to hear your thoughts. Follow me on Instagram at Aimee Takaya and send me a DM about this episode. I'd like to thank you for being part of this somatic revolution. And if you'd like to support the podcast and help more people learn about somatics, consider leaving a review or a rating. And finally, if you'd like to have the experience of relief in your tight hips or back and learn to understand what your body is really saying to you, visit youcanfreeyoursoma.com. I can't wait to share with you what is truly possible. Bye for now.